Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 58 of the Lord Ninja Joke MMA Bigs podcast. As always, I'm joined by Will in the UK and Josh in Australia. Today, we're going to be breaking down the Vegas 116 card, headlined by Aljamain Sterling and Youssef Zalal in the featherweight division. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. So, yeah, here's the card. We're going to focus on the main card. Actually, we're not going to talk about Grant Martinetti, but every other fight we're going to go into detail outside of the main card, which I think is actually not too bad. Do you guys have any thoughts on the rest of the card? Are you looking forward to this card?
This card is a bit of a mixed bag. Like, if you look in the middle there, you've got Vieira, McConaughey, McKay, Dumas, and then MBS, Mayra, Bueno, Silva, and Montague. Those four fights there are probably going to be when everyone falls asleep, and that's fine. Like, it's good to sleep every now and then. But if there is one debutant that I want to highlight, it would be Victor Valenzuela. He is a fairly high-level kickboxer. He won a Grand Prix back in 2019. I don't know in which state or which country, but he did win that. So there was a kickboxing tournament, and I believe this is on short notice, which kind of raises this question about whether or not Max Griffin can make weight healthily enough in that short notice, time. But expect very vicious strikes from Valenzuela. He's very good with the hook combos. Lucas Brennan is a fairly weird, not weird. I mean, look, whenever I say weird, I mean weird as in like grappling weird. I think all pure grapplers are weird anyway, but he's weird in that regard, right? He has a lot of rear naked chokes under his belt. He's got decent submissions, but then again, he's fighting Francis Marshall, who himself is at least a UFC fighter. It's a step up in competition. So I do think that that fight's going to be interesting if it hits a mat. And then as Dom alluded to, the David Grant Martinetti fight. Martinetti is the one who fought oh god, what's the Russian dude from last week? I forgot. Yeah,
Vologdin.
Yeah, Vologdin. Yes, that was a great fight. I think anyone who can go 3 rounds at that kind of pace deserves respect. And so, whilst people are giving Grant a lot of respect, because he's a veteran and all that stuff, I feel like Martinetti can make this a grueling fight. So that's another fight that I'm looking forward to. Ryan Spann should be able to touch the chin of Buchicha and put him down. That's my wild guy of the whole, event. But other than that, I mean, the card itself is just apex, really. What about you, Will? What do you think?
Sorry, you caught me mid-yawn. I'm not sure if I was yawning because it's 6:30 in the morning for me, or if it's because I'm having to look at this card. I'm not really that interested in this one, if I'm honest. Like, there's a couple of good names. Sometimes two good names are fighting each other, but like the main event is way above everything else. I mean, obviously, it's the fight I've chosen to break down, and I'm a women's MMA apologist, but Dumont Edwards as co-main is just insulting. I suppose. I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, it's in the Apex, so there isn't necessarily like a paying audience, or not really anyway. So I guess they can justify whatever the hell they want. Also, to be fair, I think there was another fight that was supposed to be high up on the billing of this card that got moved. So this is like a short notice move around. So maybe they deserve some grace there. But yeah, I mean, Josh has highlighted the key names. Like, I'm always interested when Alexander Hernandez fights. I think I don't know why, but he's a fighter that I always seem to have a strong opinion on whenever he fights. Montel Jackson's coming back after a questionable last performance, and Raoni Barcelos is obviously one to watch after the Peyton Talbot win a few fights ago. Buchecha versus Spann does not interest me at all. Rodolfo Vieira versus McConaughey doesn't interest me. Like, if it's not stylistically interesting, it's just dead. So there are some fights that interest me. I think Alan Carr versus Pilastri will be interesting if you if you know what to expect from the fight, because it's very striker versus grappler, and Pilastri probably pulls it on late, which does kind of make for a fun watch as we sort of like watch somebody's cardio fall apart and somebody's like chances of winning kind of rise. Hopefully, I always find those kind of situations interesting in an MMA fight. But yeah, aside from that, I'm not overly keen on anything. But the main event should be great. So there's that. How about you, Dom? Does this one appeal to you in any way?
No, unlike you two guys who are sort of kind of masochistic, breaking down every fight, or at least looking into every fight. I really haven't looked into many of these. I couldn't tell you who Lucas Brennan is to save my life, or Victor Valenzuela, so you can't say his name. I do know who Talita Alencar and Julie Pilastri are, though. So yeah, even though this is a hardcore card, and I'm a hardcore fan, there are still people on here that I just, like don't want to watch, like Dumas and McVeigh. But yeah, like you said, I think the fights we're breaking down are the best ones, and yeah, I'm looking forward to speaking about those with you guys. So let's do it. And yeah, with the main event, 5 rounds. And it's important to note this wasn't originally 5 rounds. So I think it was in early April that this was switched. I was looking for the date, and I need to fact check that. Maybe one of you guys can check the date that it was actually pulled. The main event was pulled. So it was supposed to be Sean Brady, wasn't it? Sean Brady and Buckley. And they moved that to a numbered card, I think UFC 328. I don't know what the reason was. I guess they wanted to have more fights on the UFC 328 card. So this was supposed to be a 3-round fight. And the reason that's important is because I think a 3-round fight would usually favor someone who has a control-based game, like Sterling does. Also, he's an older fighter, right? He's almost 37. He's going to be 37 in July. But yeah, this has moved to 5 rounds. And we know Sterling has 5-round experience, so I take that point. But I'm guessing both fighters were training for 3 rounds until April the 4th, which is, I'm going to say, when they switched this to 5 rounds. So basically, neither a fighter would have done a 5-round camp. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's fair, but I also want to give Sterling the slight edge here because he does have the 5-round cardio, and that's already evident with his fights against Ortega, Cejudo back in 2023. He does have the 5-round cardio. The question here is whether or not Zalal does really. So yeah, back to you, Dom.
Just quickly, I can see a report from March 11th that they moved Brady Buckley, but that doesn't necessarily confirm that Aljo and Zalal were told that it's going to be a 5-rounder. But another point to add is that weirdly, this is the second time in a row that this has happened for Aljo. He was given a 5-round fight that he thought was 3, wasn't he, against Brian Ortega quite late on? Because I bet on Aljo, and I think I lost a lot of confidence in him with it becoming 5 rounds on short notice. But he didn't really seem to struggle across 5 there. Or am I thinking, is it the other way around? Did it become a 3-round fight from a 5? God knows. But yeah,
I'm sure it was. I think it was a 3-round fight originally. Then it was a 5-round fight.
Yeah. So this isn't the first time that Aljo is having to do a short notice 5-rounder, and he looked fine last time. But I guess Ortega didn't really give him much to think about in the cage. But anyway, I digress. Dom, please take it away.
Yeah, I mean, so we're all going to speak about this fight. I'm not going to give like an in-depth breakdown. I will rely on each of you to help me. This is a striker versus grappler in some sense, although I don't think that's fully fair on Zalal. Zalal has shown grappling in his grappling chops in his recent fights. He's got a fair few submissions actually. He submitted Josh Emmett in his last fight. Youssef Zalal is a fighter who's in his second stint in the UFC, and he's unbeaten in his second stint. So when he first entered the UFC, I think he was like 21 years old, and there was a lot of hype on him. And he went the distance with Topuria, probably done the best against Topuria that anyone has, I think, so far in the UFC. So that was quite a good thing. But he didn't really live up to the hype, and he lost a couple of decisions, and eventually he left the UFC and he went onto the regional scene where he really sharpened his tools. And since he's come back, he's looked, really, really good, like a top 5 featherweight. And Sterling needs no introduction, right? Former bantamweight champion. He's had fights against Petr Yan. He obviously had the famous disqualification win. He won the belt where he cried. They didn't. It was like a weird acceptance of the belt where he was crying. I wasn't sure if he was happy or sad, and he got a lot of shtick for that. But recently he's moved up to featherweight, so he's had 3 fights at featherweight. He fought Calvin Kattar, and that was Kattar's first fight back after injury. So he just took him down, mauled him. Then he lost a grappling fight to Evloev over 3 rounds. That was mightily impressive, given that we expect Evloev to probably fight for the title. And then in his last outing, he fought an injured Brian Ortega for 5 rounds in what was a pretty drab affair. I think most people were expecting Aljamain to finish Ortega, and that's where I'm going to leave it with the breakdown for now. Anyway, we're going to discussion about this, but Sterling, I don't think has much finishing upside here. So I think if you wanted to play this real safe, and Josh can correct me if you think I'm wrong, I think the finishing upside is really with Zalal, either on the feet or even through submissions. I think Sterling will want to play this safe, and I think he will go for control. I see him getting tired, and I see him losing this fight. And I think Zalal's going to finish him late. And I know that they used to be training partners back in the day, so they know each other pretty well. So I'm going to say Zalal's merciful and sub Sterling late. But that's just my take. So I'd love to hear what you guys think.
All right. Well, look, we kind of spoke about this before the recording, but I do want to highlight what I pretty much said. Like, when you watch that fight between Sterling and Evloev, you kind of realize that Sterling is that guy. I mean, I don't want to blow smoke up Sterling's ass, because I'm pretty sure Merab does it anyway. But I do think that Sterling is going to be a demonic presence in the cage this weekend. I mean, it's the Apex. The Apex cage typically favors the smaller wrestler kind of fighter. And whilst Zalal definitely does have grappling chops, I do think that defensively he's going to be too focused on defending the wrestling and not really being able to offensively get anything out there, right? Because as we know, whenever a wrestler wrestles, it's always a game of feints, right? The person defending the takedown always waits for the takedown. They don't really try and mitigate that takedown threat by striking. And whilst Zalal certainly can strike, I just think that Sterling's forward pressure and his high pace of action and his 5 rounds of cardio can absolutely make Zalal freeze up a little bit. And a frozen Zalal is not great. So I just think that Sterling, and in all of his experience, would coalesce, if that's the right word, or combine or whatever into this 5-round Apex fight. I just think Sterling has all the tools. I can't imagine Zalal having too much of a chance here. Maybe he can use his counter wrestling defensively, but I just don't know, because you're still defending, right? You're still losing to the judges. If you're getting taken down, or if you're getting like into a position where you're about to be taken down, like a body lock against the cage, or like a takedown from a double leg that makes Zalal post up his arm so he can kind of have his balance still. It's still to the judges' eyes of and the judges are stupid, right? It's still to their eyes, Sterling being the active fighter. So even on the scorecards, I do expect Sterling to be favored each round if he is the aggressor. So yeah, that's my kind of little rant. What about you, Will?
I feel like I start to say this more and more each week we record, but Youssef Zalal is a very complicated fighter for me personally, because as somebody who went all into this, UFC analysis betting game around COVID, Youssef Zalal is a COVID fighter. He was somebody who made his debut, I think, literally like a couple of weeks before the pandemic. It might have been like one of the last cards before it went off. He put together a 3-fight win streak of decision wins, and I'm pretty sure I bet on him to win by decision in everything. I was convinced that he was just so pillow-fisted and had absolutely no finishing ability of his own, and he was fighting guys like Peter Barrett. Like, who the fuck is that? He beat Austin Lingo, who's like, a classic like COVID time prelim fighter who got cut. Anyway, so he goes on his losing streak, and they're all close competitive fights. Like it was weird. It was like he's quite clearly prelim level, but he's not exciting and he's got no finishing ability. Eventually gets cut after 3 losses and a draw. And then he came back against Billy Quarantillo, who, not very good, but definitely has cardio and like puts a pace on somebody. So I was like, everyone was like hyping up Zalal on his way back, being like, oh, he had the most competitive fight with Topuria. And I was like, yeah, but like Topuria wasn't the guy he is now back then. This was in 2020. And I was baffled as to why everyone loved Zalal, because he'd like finished some guys on the regional scene. Like, what does that tell you? And then looked amazing. And he's gone and looked amazing and amazing and amazing and amazing and amazing. With literally all finishes except for one in his 5 wins. So I speak about this quite often with my Reddit write-ups, that I think it's quite hard when you've been analyzing MMA for a long time, because you get set opinions over a decent stretch of time on fighters. It's very hard to adapt with the times when guys quite clearly are not who they used to be. But then also on the flip side, I look at Zalal's record in this second stint in the UFC, and like there's an asterisk on every guy. Like Josh Emmett, he beat in like 90 seconds. Josh Emmett looked like shit against Vallejos last time. He beat Calvin Kattar over 15 minutes, where Calvin Kattar didn't land anything for 2 rounds. Calvin Kattar looked like shit against Steve Garcia last time round. Jack Shaw, great grappler, really impressive that he submitted him. And then you remember that Jack Shaw has been trying to retire for multiple years and just doesn't give a shit about MMA anymore. Jono Aarons, I mean, who the fuck is that? And then Billy Quarantillo has, been finished by Barbosa and Cub Swanson before and after that Zalal loss. So, that's definitely questionable. And then he faces Aljamain Sterling here. Like, I would not be surprised if this is like a 50-45 Aljamain shows levels and we're all like, oh shit, Zalal's probably not actually as good as we thought it was. That wouldn't surprise me too much. I'm not saying I think that happens, but like, it's just tricky. It is. I don't know where I sit with Zalal, because I'm just not convinced that I've seen anything near a top 10 competitive fight from him that I can trust him against this level of comp. And like Aljamain Sterling is very good. I mean, like he almost beat Movsar Evloev. Like we've spoken enough about Aljo's ability, but like I'm very hesitant and do not want to trust Zalal, especially considering on like the betting line he's like -160 now or something, which is a crazy number against Aljo. So yeah, I am dubious, but I'm not betting anything here. So it's just one to avoid, in my opinion.
Some money has come back in on Sterling recently, today actually. So I think you can find Youssef Zalal more in the like -130, -140 range again on certain betting sites. And yeah, no, I think I can understand where you're coming from, Will, mentioning all those fights of Youssef Zalal. The level of competition is not really comparable between the two. I just think there's trajectory and motivation to consider as well. Sterling getting on in age, and I don't think that he's going to get a shot at the title, even if he wins this. Not saying that Zalal will get a shot at the title if he wins this, but I think he has title ambitions. He's 29, and for me, it's the stylistics. The key thing is what Josh mentioned. If Aljo is the aggressor for 3 of the 5 rounds or the majority of the rounds, then yeah, maybe he's going to get the nod on the scorecards. But I think all the finishing upside for me, from what I've seen, is with Zalal. I think also striking wise, I think that's one of the key things. You can actually do a fair comparison sort of their striking by just looking at how they fought Kattar and looking at their striking against Kattar. I think Zalal's jab is lightning fast. I think that Sterling will not want to strike with Zalal. I think he'll want to get this down pretty quick. So I think there's a good chance that Sterling will look good early. But I refute the claim about the 5-round cardio. I think if you watch some of the fights he had with Petr Yan, when he was forced to strike, he looked really awful. I mean, Sterling, I think, really lost the first fight. We all know that. and there wouldn't have been a second fight. So there's a sliding doors moment where we're not even discussing this fight. Sterling probably retired at bantamweight, having never become a champion. He didn't become a champion legitimately, right? And he did win the second fight fairly. It was a very close fight, and some people thought Petr won that fight, but he was gassed in those later rounds in both those fights. Ortega as a 5-round fight was a non-event because ultimately Ortega shouldn't have been fighting. He was in hospital that week. He didn't make weight. They changed the weight class, didn't they? Fight like 160 pounds, something ridiculous. I can't remember what it was, but they went up several weight classes to fight. It was just a farce, and like they basically forced Ortega to fight, and he shouldn't have fought there. And Sterling couldn't finish a one-armed Dillashaw, and he couldn't finish the compromised Brian Ortega. So I love Sterling, and I said on the podcast before I got like 12 out of 13 Mirzakhanov bets correct. I bet on Aljamain Sterling 12 times. I've got 11 of them correct. The only one I missed was a prop, and I think now's the time to switch sides here. That's my opinion. I think that stylistically it works out well. I take all the doubt on Zalal. I think that's all fair comments. But I think at some point you have to look at what's in front of you, and I think Sterling he's on the decline, not a severe decline, because I saw a photo of him. He looks absolutely ripped. So as you said, Josh, he's obviously been on all the supplements that he needs, but I don't know if that's going to help him in the championship round. So I think he could look good early here, and he could well hold Zalal down. But what we've seen of Zalal is that he's improved his ground game, so he should be able to scramble, and if not scramble, then threaten subs on the bottom to create opportunities for himself to get back up. I don't know if you guys want to respond to anything I've said there. Maybe about the cardio thing.
No, not really. I just, I think we are in for a big question that's about to be answered, and then that question is going to be whether or not Zalal belongs in the top tier of this division. Like, I feel like Zalal is the featherweight version of Paddy Pimblett in that he's had a rapid rise, but against two, right? He has a big streak, but against two, is he ready for the top dogs of the division? Who knows, right? So
I know what you did there, Josh. You're just jinxing him, calling him Paddy Pimblett. Zalal is not going to do what Paddy did. He's not going to. I think he's smarter than Paddy. Unfortunately, I bet on Paddy in that fight, and he just decided that striking with Gaethje was somehow a good idea. If Zalal's going to grapple with Sterling, I guess I'm going to have to eat my words, aren't I?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll make sure to call you out on that next week.
I do not want to see 5 rounds of Zalal engaging with Sterling. If he gets held down by Sterling, that's a different matter, right? But if he actively goes to the grappling, that will be disappointing to say the least. All right, we're moving on to the torturous moment where we lose all our viewers. It's me talking about women's MMA again. But to be fair, this time around, it's me talking about the co-main event. So actually, I'm within my right to do this. I will keep it short and sweet this week, hopefully. So we have Norma Dumont versus Joselyne Edwards. This fight is crazy. If you were to be told in 2021 when Joselyne Edwards was, struggling against the lowest level competition possible, and Norma Dumont was losing by KO to Megan Anderson, people wouldn't have believed that this would ever co-main event a fight card, or also, be possibly a title eliminator. I mean, obviously the bantamweight division is waiting on Amanda Nunes to get better. Oh no, it was Kayla Harrison who got injured. But they're waiting for those two to fight, really. That's the fight everyone wants to see. But the bantamweight division in the women's side is incredibly shallow. So this is actually 2 of the best in the division going at it. Crazy. Anyway, the one thing that stands out here that is most of the discussion is that Joselyne Edwards has gone from being an absolutely mediocre fighter who had 8 decision fights in a row where she went 4-4, losing to the likes of Jessica Rose Clark and beating the likes of Lucy Pudilova. Christ. So yeah, that kind of says it all, doesn't it? Like, bang average against anybody who's decent, she's not going to go anywhere. And it kind of showed in her fights. Her striking's kind of lazy. It's low volume. She looks pretty she's pretty heavy set in that it kind of does look like she should have some sort of power or physicality to her, but it doesn't really show itself.
She never really used to go for takedowns, and when she did, top control was nothing really to shout about. But then, for some random reason, she goes on a 4-fight finishing streak where she has a legitimate, like, fell asleep KO of Priscilla Cachoeira, which is one of the best women's KOs we've ever seen, because her opponent actually was, like, knocked out instead of TKO'd. She beat Chelsea Chandler. She submitted Tamira Vidal, and then most recently she slammed and then rear naked choked Nora Cornell. And she's basically turned into this very violent woman, which is one of the weirdest like career changes I've ever seen from someone. But my philosophy historically in MMA, and especially in women's, is that if you are relying on finishes to bail you out of mediocre minute winning, you're in trouble when you get higher up the division. And to quantify mediocre minute winning, she lost round 1 against Nora Cornell. She tried for her takedowns and she couldn't get them, and she looked to be the inferior fighter. I think I was using her as a parlay piece in that fight, and I was concluding at the stall at the end of round 1 that I think I'm in trouble here, because Edwards, minute winning wise, is not amazing. It's kind of hard to really show that in any other instance, because she's round 1 finished the subsequent 2 fights before, and then before that she was fighting Tamira Vidal, who is one of the worst women to do it in recent years. Anyway, that's enough on the Edwards side, but basically, in short, I just think that if she can't finish Norma Dumont, she's going to show glimpses of that woman who went on an 8-fight decision streak, who looked pretty average and didn't really do anything of any substance. And then you look on the Norma Dumont side, and in my opinion, you've got arguably the best striker in the division. Her boxing and her hand striking is very good. I mean, Irene Aldana is a fighter that people have long kind of thought possibly deserved that title for the bantamweight division, a Mexican with obviously boxing background. But Norma Dumont pieced her up. I mean, it's fair to say that Dumont doesn't have any finishing upside, really, given that I'm not even going to count them, but her decision streak must be like double digits from what I can see in front of me. But like, I think it's just quite clear to see that Norma Dumont is the superior minute winner. She's much higher volume. She's much more accurate by the looks of it. And you mean she can be taken down? She's not got bulletproof takedown defense, but her get-ups to react to that instantly are pretty good as well. I mean, there's just so much more confidence to be taken from watching a Norma Dumont fight across 15 minutes and thinking this woman is superior to Joselyne Edwards. It's just not hard to see. I mean, the level of competition is also pretty crazy. Ketlin Vieira is a very hard woman to beat, and I know it was a split decision, but I think Norma Dumont won that one relatively cleanly. As I say, she beat the shit out of Irene Aldana, to put it bluntly. Before that, Jermaine Durandamy, a little bit washed at the time that they fought, but like, GDR used to be a champion. Chelsea Chandler's shit. Carol Rosa, that's an impressive win in my opinion. Yeah, and then obviously I'm going quite far back by this point, but I just think that Norma Dumont has shown herself to be consistently, minute by minute, better than most of the division, and I don't think that Joselyne Edwards is even at the caliber of half of the women that Dumont has beat. So if Edwards does not get some crazy surprise finish that once again we don't expect, I think Dumont makes this one look like a cakewalk, if I'm completely honest. So yeah, I think it'll be like a 30-27 Dumont. I think it probably won't be as exciting as any of Joselyne Edwards' most recent fights, but nothing is more exciting than winning money. And I bet on Dumont at -155 early on the week, because I immediately was just like, this is not a mismatch, but like, I don't see much of a path to victory that doesn't come from a crazy finish from Edwards. And I think people have agreed with that, because now we're looking at like a -230 price tag, if I remember correctly, which is obviously, too much to bet on its own. So unfortunately people have missed out there. But yeah, I think Dumont is a confident pick this week on a card that has a lot of random people that I don't think you can be particularly confident in. Does anybody have any case to be made for Joselyne Edwards here, or are you guys both agreeing with me?
I mean, I'm gonna agree with you for sure, but like, imagine a scenario in which Edwards does win, and she then takes on the champion, whether it's Kayla Harrison or Nunes, for the belt. It would remind you heavily of Lauren Murphy when she fought Valentina Shevchenko back in the day, right? Like that walkout for Lauren was epic and all that stuff. And could you imagine Edwards maybe in like UFC 243 or whatever, right? Like just some card out there, you know, she walks out, epic music, only to be mauled by Harrison, for example. Like I can't see Edwards being in any kind of title picture here. I think Edwards still remains to be a prelim fighter, but she has a first class ticket to fucking co-main, so here we go. But yeah, look, Dumont is a fine featured prelim level fighter. I'm very harsh, I'm sorry, but like I look at the UFC bantamweight or women's bantamweight record rankings, and it just looks like sadness, right? It looks like something that belongs in Shooto boxing or Shooto Brazil or whatever, some sort of like Brazilian promotion, because 10 out of 5 of those fighters are from Brazil. It's like, why are all of these Brazilian women thick? It's like, fucking hell. I can't really be too fascinated by this one, to be honest. I think that we are due for a decision fight, which will lead to another decision fight. So, you know, it's going to be one of those events, I reckon. But, you know, I think Dumont wins this one. I don't see Edwards being a threat at all. Dumont's going to use her wrestling. She's going to lay and pray, maybe. Edwards is going to be frustrated and really kind of okay on the feet, but otherwise frustrated on the ground, you know. So it's a really weird co-main, but it's got to happen. So that's my comment. So yeah, what about you, Dom?
Yeah, I've got really nothing useful to add at all, except that I just didn't realize Big Norm, should we call her, is 35, 36 years old. Is she's going to be 36. That's the only black mark I can think of, because I do think she should beat Edwards comfortably, as Will said. And yeah, I'm annoyed that I didn't jump on the line when it was more playable, because I mean, minus whatever 230 or something that it is now, I think probably minus 200 is fair, so maybe it's slightly overshot. I was thinking about playing her at minus 200 earlier today, but that's already gone now. So I think the best thing for listeners to do, I guess, is probably to consider Norma Dumont via decision, right? Because hopefully that won't be minus 200, but it might be. In which case, I guess you could parlay her with Julia Pilastri. I was thinking it's funny how like the women seem safer than the men this week, but yeah, I don't really know what to do with this. I have a small amount of money down on Norma Dumont just because on the exchanges I could get I got her at like 60% or something, which is about like minus 150, but nothing notable really, nothing to write home about. So yeah, I think Dumont's the side. I just don't see how Edwards can win. Like, I don't know, like, you've got to take her down, but I think she's very good on the ground. So I don't think she's like, people are saying, oh, that's her path to victory. I don't think Edwards is going to waste too much energy trying to take her down, because I don't think she's necessarily better than her on the ground, to be honest. I think Norma Dumont will probably reverse her and get on top. So yeah, it's hard for me to see. I think Edwards is not a good fighter. So yeah, that's it. I don't have anything. Agree with Will, and I think you're betting on her, aren't you? You said that. Dumont by decision. That's what you mentioned. Should we move on?
Yeah, gladly.
Yeah, so I'm breaking this one down. I know that, Will, you've looked into this as well. You might have even looked into it more than I have. But yeah, this fight interested me only because the odds swung either today or yesterday. So basically, when it opened up, I don't know what exactly it opened at, but Hernandez was a favorite basically for the majority of time before this, and then yesterday or today, a lot of money came in on Rafa Garcia. So I think Rafa was sitting around plus 135 and Hernandez like minus 140. Nothing, not like they weren't far apart, right? And I think that's fair. It's going to be a close fight. So the odds were not markedly wide or anything. And then so I found Alexander Hernandez almost at even money on the exchanges, and I was like, well, that's interesting. Because when I'd like just thought about the fight, I thought, yeah, minus 140 seems about right for Hernandez, given his trajectory, and given that I've never been really overly impressed with Garcia. And so then I did a little bit of tape, mainly on Garcia, actually. I went back and watched a few of his fights. But if we cover Hernandez first, just to be different, and I'll put up the attributes on screen as well, because I'm going to speak about their attributes as well. Hernandez is a fighter who's been in the UFC for far longer than I realized. When I went through his record, I was like, Jesus, this guy's been in the UFC since 2018, and he's had like 17 fights, because I just don't remember watching him fight that often. But early in his career, he struggled a little bit. So he had a great start to life in the UFC, knocking out Benny Dariush, and then things just went kind of up and down for him for like a decade. Like he was not a decade, but years. He was winning one, losing one for most of his time at featherweight. So he was at featherweight, and he ended his time at featherweight with a limp performance, losing to Damon Jackson, which, you know, I like Damon Jackson. People say he's rubbish, but I really liked him. I like the Leech. I think he was a good fighter. Actually, I don't know if the Leech was actually his nickname. I might have just made that up. Yeah, and then Alexander Hernandez moved up to lightweight, which I think is probably where he should have been all along. He was probably cutting too much weight, trying to make featherweight, and he's won 4 fights in a row. So he's beaten Austin Hubbard. Actually, I should have said he missed weight, I think, for the Damon Jackson fight. So I think he was basically a lightweight then, but it was a featherweight fight. He beat Austin Hubbard, who's rubbish, Kurt Hullaber, who's also rubbish, and both of them were on the same season of the Ultimate Fighter, so that doesn't tell us much. He beat Chase Hooper, who's, not very good on the feet. And the Diego Ferreira win, people are saying Diego Ferreira's washed, but Diego Ferreira's still a good fighter, so he knocked him out. So I think he looked really good recently. And I think for me, everything that is on the right-hand side has been on display in his recent fight. Good movement, fast hands, power, accuracy, obviously a game plan, and that was evident in the Diego Ferreira fight, because he was actually losing that fight. Diego Ferreira was walking him down, and he was skirting around the outside, hardly throwing anything. It was quite frustrating, actually. I think we bet on Hernandez there. I think Will and I bet on Hernandez in that fight. And it was frustrating until it wasn't. So that might be the case here in this fight. I think the negatives on Hernandez, I think less so the belief now. I think he believes he's a good fighter. His age, so I didn't realize. I look at these fighters on the screen and I think Garcia must be like 10 years the senior of Hernandez, but Hernandez is 2 years older than Garcia. Hernandez is 33, Garcia is 31. And Hernandez, the typical criticism of him is that he slows down in fights. So a bit like any movement heavy fighter. Well, I guess we could talk about Kyler Phillips. I hope it's not a bad omen talking about Kyler Phillips, but Kyler Phillips is always very good in the first round and less good in the third round. There's a little bit of that with Alexander Hernandez, although I think at lightweight he's shown some rejuvenation in his cardio. We talk about Garcia. I don't think there's like a lot to like about him. I don't want to talk about him too much, except stylistically how he matches up with Hernandez. So he's got good grappling. He's at a good gym. He's strong and he grinds out fights. He seems pretty durable. So he had a bit of a war with Jared Gordon in his last fight. I think it's worth noting that Jared Gordon tore his meniscus, I think, or he had a MCL strain, I think it said. Basically, he couldn't really use his right knee or left knee. He got knocked over by a car 2 days before that fight and should have definitely pulled out. And Garcia really struggled. I mean, I watched that fight back, and Gordon won the first round pretty clearly. The second round, I thought Gordon won the second round. And I think the reason judges gave the second round to Garcia, well, it was Garcia finished Gordon, so it didn't go to decision. But the second round, he caught Gordon with a nasty elbow across his forehead, and then all the blood came out. And, you know, that can sometimes influence the judges. But yeah, I think Gordon was getting the better of Garcia, like a one-legged Gordon. And before that, he fought Vince Pichel. It was on Mexico. It was a Mexican fight night, and the judges were totally biased. Like Pichel definitely won at least 2 rounds, or at least 1 round in that fight, if not 2. But I think Garcia optically won the 3rd round in that fight because he took Pichel down. So yeah, I don't think Garcia does anything particularly well, but he does everything sufficiently well that he can win fights. I think he's got a little bit of a questionable record. So some of the fighters that he's beaten are not particularly good. I'd say, you know, Natan Levy, I think that's an okay. I don't know who Jesse Ronson is. I'm sure that's not a good win. You know, he's lost to Chris Grutzmacher, which is awful. There's no shame losing to Nasrat Haqparast or Drakkar Close. So yeah, I think his losses are okay. I think it's just some of these wins, you know, I don't think it means a lot beating Mahesh Jate. And like I say, the Vince Pichel one, yeah, that was like an awful performance from him. Even though it was a unanimous decision, I just watched it back, and Pichel was lighting him up, and a younger, like if 42-year-old Pichel, if it was a younger Pichel, I like Vince Pichel. I think a 40-year-old Pichel beats him, but a 42-year-old, that's just too far. So I think Hernandez is the upside here. I don't think it's massive, despite everything I've said. I think that, I think Hernandez money line is worth it at close to even money. I think I got it at like -120, -125, and I think it's still in that range. So I think it's very playable. I don't think it's like a big bet. I just think he's a better mixed martial artist. It's just his mental fortitude. And Rafa Garcia is a dog. He's just going to stay in the fight. I understand why people have taken Rafa Garcia at dog money. That's about it. I don't know what you guys think about this fight.
I have nothing. I completely forgot this fight was even happening. I didn't know until just a few minutes ago when this whole thing started. So I got nothing to say here. I don't like either particular fighter. Those things you've highlighted there are, they make sense to me. So that's about it. Like, I'm not gonna go too long onto this one. So yeah, Will, what do you have?
I used to be a big hater on Alex Hernandez. I used to be very sure about that cardio fall off in round 3. So I used to fade him quite a lot. But I just went through his MMA decisions record to see the scorecards, and he has turned it around. I mean, some of the fighters he's been going up against in doing so are not so impressive. I mean, winning round 3 against Jim Miller. Jim Miller is a guy who had the same issue as Hernandez, but worse. But yeah, it's tricky, really, isn't it? I mean, the Austin Hubbard fight at the start of this 4-fight winning streak was one such fight where Austin Hubbard beat him in round 3. That itself is just, it's just questionable, isn't it? I mean, Kurt Holloway won a round on 2 judges' scorecards against Alex Hernandez as well. It's tricky. Like, I feel like I know Hernandez really well, and I think he is a good fighter, and like I respect a lot of what he's good at. I think he has he's good in good areas, if that makes sense. I mean, the fact that he was able to pull that win against Diego Ferreira out of nowhere in a fight where he was looking quite underwhelming, and also obviously the Chase Hooper fight where he was looking great. He does blow hot and cold. I think Dom may have used those exact words, and he definitely seems like somebody that's quite hard to trust. But the crazy thing about this that I really want to highlight is that like Garcia's had 10 fights in the UFC and Hernandez has had 17, and they have the exact number to 2 decimal places of significant strikes landed per minute at 4.31, which is a crazy number, right? Like the fact that again, to 2 decimal places after so many fights, it's mad that they have the exact same output. But then you look at the significant strikes absorbed per minute, and it's at 4.51 or 4.54. So there's like a 0.03 differential between strikes absorbed per minute. So these guys, striking wise, are like identical with the amount that they've landed in their careers in the UFC, which is insane. But one thing to note, in my opinion, is that difference in competition. So I think if we are expecting this one to go 15 minutes, probably a striking affair. Hernandez doesn't really look to grapple, but actually is a decent wrestler. I think that I would expect that difference in competition to sort of be the little asterisk on that statistic, because if Hernandez is fighting the likes of, pick a name here. I mean, well, his level of competition's gone downhill in recent years, but Bill Algeo is a high volume kind of guy. Billy Quarantillo as well. Moicano, Moises, back in the day, Moises used to be good. Drew Dober, obviously Donald Cerrone. Whereas, what name stands out to me on the Garcia side? Drakkar Klose. I mean, Nasrat Haqparast, a tough UFC debut, but Drakkar Klose is pretty much the only guy that I'm like, oh wow, he's a decent enough striker, but Drakkar Klose, he's not that good. So yeah, I think that the devil is in the details in this one, and Garcia should probably expect to be slightly is the key word, inferior to Hernandez minute by minute. That was my thinking going into it. So talking about the line movement for a little bit, when it opened, I think the early, not like the opener, but where it settled originally with Hernandez at -150, and I bet him at -135. I thought it was a decent price. It then skyrocketed to like -175. So I had 2 units on Hernandez at -135, and I thought that was great. Then suddenly realized that people were like really aggressively betting Garcia because they thought it was too wide. So I cashed out of my Hernandez bet thinking I'd get a better line. And then when Garcia was at +130, I saw that he then got steamed down to like almost a pick 'em. So I bet Garcia for 3 units at +130, and now we're sitting with a much closer line. So I basically just saw this yo-yoing line movement, and I just thought, do you know what? I think this is a fight where, like, and either guy could win. It is a close fight. Maybe I'm missing something. So I just thought I'd just trade it and essentially like create an arb opportunity. So I've got 3 units on Garcia at +130, but I think very soon I'm going to bet the Hernandez side to equal that out and confirm some profit if I can, which I should be able to. So yeah, thankfully the line movement kind of took the decision making away from me, so I'm not actually going to have a bet on this one. Just free money, which is nice. But yeah, it's a complicated fight because they're two guys who are quite similar. I don't really think anyone can have a strong opinion on this fight. It just seems like a close one, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the case. Like I said, I don't advocate for putting much money on this. But yeah, I do think that the line movement is. I think one of the reasons could be Hernandez's last fight. Actually, that's one thing that came to mind because I was thinking this is strange because the line seemed to be moving towards him, and I thought maybe people remembered that there was obviously the pulling of his fight. He was supposed to fight Michael Johnson, and on the day of the fight, there was some strange line movement towards Johnson. So Hernandez was a favorite, and Johnson gained, I don't know, 50 to 100 points. It was almost even money on the day of the fight. And there was some rumors about Hernandez having been injured. Nothing was confirmed, and Hernandez denied not being fit to fight. But it was all just a little bit like strange. And the first thing I thought was actually when I saw line, I thought Hernandez might be injured again. That's what I thought. But then I sort of reset my mind. I was like, come on a second. I mean, people would probably just like Garcia in this spot. Which is fair, but no, I think Hernandez is better everywhere. So I think even money is a good bet. +130 on Garcia, I thought that was fair. I think that's a fair price for him. I don't think even money, in my opinion, is necessarily where the line should be. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
All right, so this is one fight that kind of stood out to me amongst the pile of garbage that is the rest of the fight, excluding the ones that we talked about just then. Montel Jackson and Barcelos is a very interesting clash of styles, almost, because they both have similar ways to fight. I guess. I mean, it sounds weird to say that, but let me try and break it down in a very, very rough and raw way. So Barcelos has 14 fights in the UFC. He is a veteran by all means. He has been fighting the who's who of the whatever weight this is division, the bantamweight division, I guess, But the one thing that you should keep an eye on, or at least know about, is that he has attempted nearly 100 takedowns in his 14 fights. So in total, really, 87 takedowns attempted for his UFC career. So that's pretty damn impressive. And that volume has pretty much skyrocketed in the last couple of years. Takedowns will very much be the main weapon for Barcelos here, but not exclusively, because I do think that Barcelos on the feet is a more volume-oriented fighter. He likes to throw out more mixed attacks. He doesn't really attack the legs too often. He's more of a headhunter, but he can and should, frankly, attack the legs against Jackson here, because I do expect Jackson to retreat. I mean, that sounds like a very disrespectful thing to say, but when you have a tough Brazilian in front of you like Barcelos, you have to circle away. You have to not be pinned down by the wrestler here. The smaller cage favors the wrestler. I say this almost every single week. I'm sick of it. You're sick of it. We're all sick of it. But if Barcelos can pin Jackson against the cage and, get those takedowns going, it's only going to make Barcelos look better, really, because he's the one getting the takedowns and all that stuff. With that said, though, Barcelos, if this fight remains in the center of the cage, he's not going to get any takedowns whatsoever. I almost guarantee that if these two fighters are in the middle of the octagon, in that little segment where the monster can is or whatever it is these days, I expect no takedowns to be landed by Barcelos because Jackson has a very extensive wrestling background. If he chose a different career path, he could have been wrestling in the Olympics by now. That was one of his career aspirations. I truly think that he is one of the most underrated wrestlers in this division, but he doesn't really show it too much. So maybe that's why it's not really spoken about. Anyway, I say that there will be no takedowns in the middle of the cage because of the sprawl. We all know what a sprawl is. It's when you shift your hips back, you lay down flat, and you get top control over your opponent, all that stuff. So you can't really sprawl when your back's against the cage or against the fence, and that's why I expect Barcelos to focus his wrestling against the fence because it's easier to get someone down from there. Now, to speak about Jackson, because I've been, filleting fucking Barcelos for the past minute or two here. Because Jackson is going to be too busy defending those takedowns, in my opinion, I do think that his best attribute in this fight, or his best way to win this fight, is to stick and move. There's not much real estate in an apex cage. I mean, it's a small area. You could fart, and on the other side of the cage, someone will smell it. It's one of those tiny ass cages, and I expect Montel Jackson's height and reach and whatever to be a negative because obviously he has no room to move or maneuver properly, and that's why I think he has to just stick and move. It's his only option. Either that or he just collides with Barcelos and gets taken down. Jackson has an 8-inch reach advantage. We all know that. Like, that's already on the screen there. That's nothing to really be wow at. There is a potential for a jumping knee attack because if Barcelos does go for a double leg or any waist attack, Jackson's gonna read it, and Jackson is quick. It's his nickname, Montel Quick Jackson, and I reckon that maybe he can catch Barcelos off guard here. But the only thing about a jumping knee attack is that it's a one-off thing, right? You use it once. If it doesn't land, you don't use it again. You go back to whatever plan A was, right? So I don't think Jackson is going to have too much of a weaponry advantage here. I reckon Jackson is just going to primarily stick and moving. I mean, the damage is a big contributing factor to getting points and all that stuff. So if he can scar up the face of Barcelos, then to the judges, he's winning. So I do think that Jackson, utilizing that second move, jab, and whatever game plan, he could win this one. I hope he doesn't because I picked Barcelos here, but he could win this one, But yeah, in conclusion, because I'm ranting and raving a lot, I expect Barcelos to pretty much pin Jackson against the cage, neutralize any kind of striking and reach that Jackson has, and maybe go for those takedowns every now and then. There are going to be maybe 8 to 10 takedown attempts from Barcelos throughout this fight. And depending on where the fight takes place, there might be a high level of success. We don't know. But for my pick, for my bets and whatever, I got this fight going the distance. And I think I also have, let me see here, Barcelos 5 points. I don't know what the odds are for that, but either way, I am going with the dog, I think. I don't remember, but either way, I'm going with the Brazilian. So that's that's my conclusion. That's my quick and hopefully quick rant and all that stuff. Any takers? Dom, Will, who wants to go first?
After you, Will.
Sure thing. I don't have much to say about this one because I didn't tape it. I can kind of acknowledge the most important narrative from a betting perspective here, and that is that because Montel Jackson looked so shit in his last fight against Davison Figueiredo, no one trusts him. Because if that Figgy fight had never happened and Montel was on his 6 fight winning streak in the UFC that spans 6 years, there's no way he would be minus 175 against Raoni Barcelos, who, for all intents and purposes, is an old man. I know he's on a 4 fight winning streak, but Ricky Simone is a questionable guy these days. Cody Garbrandt's washed. Talbot, insane, one of the biggest upsets in UFC history, and then Christian Quinones, meh. There's a massive level gap here. I'd love to have seen what the price would have been if Montel never lost to Davison Figueiredo. And if you think that was just a one-off blip and you think that, he had a stomach bug or some random shit, then sure, go ahead, bet on Montel Jackson at minus 175. And hopefully, for your sake, you get a massive discount and you are, reaping the benefits of that. Obviously, I used the royal you there. That's not aimed at you, Josh. But my issue with Montel Jackson, who, full disclaimer, I described as a top 10 fighter before the Figgy fight. And I did bet him in a parlay quite heavily there against Figgy because I thought Figgy was washed. If you watch that fight, as I have done since, I think I was taping Figueiredo, neither guy went out there to win. Both guys went out there not to lose, and Davidson Figueiredo did a better job of trying not to lose. It wasn't Montel Jackson. It wasn't Figueiredo winning the fight. It was Montel Jackson losing the fight, if that makes sense. And it then made me sort of question: is this man a massive flake? Because we've all always known the quote about him having hands as big as Ngannou or whatever. Like he's been somebody that has been taken very seriously. I mean, Josh mentioned his wrestling background, massive frame, reach advantage over everyone, really, really talented person. Knocked out Dumont Blackshear in 18 seconds. I don't think anyone's ever done that before. Like, he's very talented, and he's only lost to guys when it kind of felt like he was just too green when he fought Brett Johns and Ricky Simone. So, Montel Jackson was supposed to have a very interesting career. He comes into the UFC in 2018. After winning on Contender Series, again loses that Simone fight, bounces back literally like 3-4 months later and submits Brian Kelleher, then takes a few months off, beats Andre Sukumtov, then takes a year off, and then beats Felipe Colares. By that point, no one really knows who he is because he's lost all his momentum with a year off, loses to Brett Johns, and then has 2 fights in 2021, and from that point onwards basically has 1 fight per year from 2021, going on this streak of 6 wins. Why, if you are a young guy with so much hype and so much promise, and he must know the UFC backed him, why did he only fight once a year? It just screams somebody who doesn't take their career so seriously. It reminds me a lot of Mike Davis. Mike Davis was a guy that if you know, like super talented guy, had a couple of losses, but it was because he just got fought guys too early in his career, but just never showed up. Same with like Gregor Gillespie, like just guys that we had so much like interest in, and we're like, when is this dude fighting? And just never was. And then Montel Jackson gets that big step up in competition and that big moment to be a co-main against a former champion and really put himself firmly into that top 15, top 10, and he shits the bed. I just can't trust this guy. So concluding that, I literally didn't even bother taping this one because we know, what does everyone know about Raoni Barcelos these days? He's capable of springing a fucking upset if he wants to. So I absolutely understand wanting to pick the dog here. So I get why Josh is siding with Barcelos, but it's the only real narrative you can take is that, maybe Montel Jackson is not trustworthy, and the betting line reflects that because if we were confident in Montel's ability to show up on the night, there's no way he should be minus 175 to Barcelos, in my opinion. So, yeah, it's a complicated one where it's the external factors that really dictate this one. I could see Montel look like shit and Raoni be a live dog, and I could see Montel obliterate Raoni Barcelos. Either things are possible, in my opinion. So we'll just see what version of Montel we get. Yeah, it's a low confidence spot for me. Dom, how about you?
Yeah, unfortunately, like you, I haven't done a lot of tape for this one. I think this is one where I think you might be able to derive some insights if you tape it. And I'm going to trust Joshua. Actually, I'm going to say that the value at least is on Barcelos, and specifically, I like the decision play because I don't think Barcelos not got a lot of finishing upside here. I think Montel's. I don't think he's ever been. Well, he's under. Yeah, well, he's never been finished, has he?
Not in the UFC, no.
Not in the UFC. So yeah, I think, like you said, and to Will's point, if he turns up and he just smashes Barcelos, you wouldn't be that surprised. But I think that's usually going to happen early. Looking at his finishes, they're all round one. So Darce stroke of Kelleher round one, Jesse Strader punches round one, Rani Yaya punches round one, Dumont Blackshear round one. So yeah, I think you could maybe cover yourself because I think the round one KO is 7-1, so you could take that, and you could play Barcelos by decision, but that's pretty short actually. Barcelos by decision is 3.25 or plus 225, so like you might be able to find that wider, in a different book because BetOnline's pretty stingy with the props. So yeah, I think there's probably a way to attack it with props. I think if you're just going to play it purely from the money line, I completely agree with what Will said. Like if this is pre-Devson Figueiredo, probably Barcelos would be like plus 600, and then I'd definitely play plus 600 because the reason I'd say that is because we've seen how Montel Jackson can be beaten with wrestling. And so Brett Johns, I remember taping that because I think I covered on the podcast Jackson against Daniel Marcos, and one of the reasons I was confident in Montel Jackson in that spot, even though it turned into a much greasier fight than I was expecting, because Montel I think was minus 200 there in that spot, it's because Brett Johns is a grappler. He's a good grappler. Marcos isn't. So Brett Johns is a good grappler. I don't think he's as good as Barcelos. He doesn't have any national accolades. He's not a Welsh wrestling champion or something. Not that would mean much anyway. But he just took down Montel Jackson every single round, and it was a close fight. And you could argue that Jackson won it, but Jackson's so low volume, right? So that was the frustration watching that fight, is that when it was on the feet, he just wasn't throwing enough. And I actually thought Jackson won that fight. So I think this is a tough fight for Barcelos. I wouldn't play the money lines, but if I had to, I guess I'd slightly lean Barcelos, but not by much, to be honest, because of what Will said. It could just be a red herring, the Figueiredo fight in Brazil as well. But I do like the Jackson early finish. I guess you could go round 1 or 2, or the Barcelos decision, because I think if this fight is going long, the only way it's going long is Barcelos holding or grinding on Jackson, which is something which can be done for 3 rounds by a 40-year-old man. I'm just hoping that doesn't happen in the main event, of course. So yeah, all this to say, I'm going to go with Josh's Barcelos decision. I might play that, but not a 3.25. Should we take a look at our bets for this week? I haven't got much, but I think you guys have got a little bit more.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I got a few, and some of them are on fights we haven't talked about. Obviously, Dumont, yeah, tick that one off. We talked about that. Rodolfo Vieira by submission, plus 210 really surprises me because Rodolfo Vieira is like minus 250 on the money line, which is a 71% winning probability. But then his submission prop being plus 210, that's like 31%. Like, why do they think that if Rodolfo Vieira definitely wins, he only wins by submission like half the time? Like, surely that's a very high amount of his winning equity. Just mathematically seems wrong to me. I've barely done any tape on that fight. I mean, McConaughey could be a very good grappler, but then I look at his stats and I see he was taken down twice in his last fight and then 3 times by Cody Brundage. So you can floor the guy, So I just think that honestly, from a mathematical perspective, that one is intriguing. So I bet that for a unit. I bet Cedric Dumas for 0.5 units, which I feel absolutely disgusting about. But I just don't understand what it is Jackson McVeigh has done to deserve to be minus 225 against him. Crazy to me. So I just thought I'll pay the money to find out. I think people hate Dumas a lot, justifiably so. The guy's a bell end and has been since before he got to the UFC. But I don't think that necessarily translates to him being massively outskilled here against a guy who has 2 round 1 submission losses. So yeah, I'll pay to find out why he's so wide there. Michelle Montague by KO or decision. She's like minus 350, pushing minus 400 at the moment. A wide money line, but I understand it. She's a wrestler who wants to just sit in top control, and Mayra Bueno Silva is a predominantly BJJ girl that likes to play off her back and lose minutes. I specifically in betting the KO or decision to cut a lot out of that price tag, because I think that Montague is being given way too much of a chance, like respect-wise, to submit Mayra Bueno Silva. I don't think that you can submit high-level BJJ people that easily. And yes, Montague has a lot of like rear naked choke wins, but like against who defensively? Like nobody. So I mean, she couldn't finish Luana Carolina in her last fight, so she's expected. Well, not expected, but people think there's a high chance she submits Mayra Bueno Silva. I don't think so. So I think turning a minus 400 into a minus 160 by just removing a method of victory I don't expect to happen. That's, to me, seems like value, so I like that one. And then finally, Julia Pilastri. I kind of mentioned this in the intro when we were looking at all of the fights, but Talita Alencar is a wrestler, BJJ girl who doesn't really do much offensively except wrestle, and her striking's terrible. If these two are forced to strike, Pilastri will murder her, basically. So I think that obviously, you're going to see Alencar give her best efforts early, because she's going to be, playing the striking is lava. So she'll be looking to wrestle, and her cardio does not hold up for 15 minutes if she has to shoot and reshoot and reshoot. We saw that in her Dana White's Contender Series fight. So I'm hoping she has a little bit of early success, and then it tapers off into the half of the fight. And we've seen Pilastri, put the afterburners on and finish fighters late. She KO'd Karolina Kowalkiewicz in round 3 in her last fight. So I feel like it's just one of those angles where like accumulative damage from with a massive striking advantage for Pilastri. Her ITD is plus 300. Don't overcomplicate it. Just take the ITD. But also, if you want, and if you have a decent like upwards trajectory in the odds, a round 2 or 3 finish is also kind of nice. So I've split my stake across those two things. But Pilastri ITD is the main focus there. Dom, how about you? What are you going for this one?
Yeah, I've already spoken about Zalal and Hernandez earlier. I just would say that I should have added these props, but I didn't. But I like Zalal decision no action. I think that's actually a great value bet because it's minus 140 at the moment. And I think that if there's going to be a finish in that fight, I think it's going to come from the Zalal side. I think he's younger, he's hungrier. I'm definitely not ruling out an Aljo boring decision. I think that's going to be my main fear for that fight. I mean, Aljo could prove me wrong. He could roll back the years and I don't know. He could sub Zalal as Josh suggested, but I think if Aljo's going to win, it's the decision. So if you want a safer bet that's not lined too differently, Zalal decision no action. I'm also going to take Zalal late props. I'm going to take Zalal 4-5 or by decision. I think that there's a lot of potential there for Zalal to survive the early grappling onslaught and to put it on Aljo on the feet. I'm not going to say that he knocks out or subs Aljo. I couldn't say specifically, but I think if Aljo tires out in rounds 4 and 5, I think there'll be, some opportunities there, and it's like very, very wide. It's like you're talking about 25-1. So worth sprinkling in my opinion. And yeah, I'd like to play Dumont in some fashion. And yeah, I mean, hearing the breakdown of Barcelos and what's his face, Montel Jackson, I think there could be something there on the Montel early, Barcelos late. So I might look to add those. Josh, what have you got?
Yeah, standard stuff from me, really. So I got the parlay there. Rafael Filo via sub points is there only because he's fighting Cody Durden on very short notice. And as we know, Cody Durden is shit. Montague Moneyline is there because, frankly, MBS or Mayra Bueno Silva has the fight IQ of a fish. Barcelos Jackson over 2.5 goes the distance. I spoke about that one. I feel like it's going to be a wrestling heavy fight, and wrestling tends to lead to a decision. And Sterling Zalal, we spoke about that too. And you guys got all of our thoughts there. And I think, I personally think the over is going to hit. So hopefully it hits. Now we go to the alt bets. McConaughey. Now I looked into McConaughey earlier, and where I'm sorry, Will, if I butcher what you said, but I think you said something about like, look, if McConaughey can get taken down, then surely then Dumas can take him down. And whilst that's true, I do want to say that McConaughey defended a whole lot of takedowns from Sisakayev, which is a prospect from Turkey. And whilst his striking is a bit sloppy, a bit shit, I do think that on the feet he can hit. And honestly, I think that's he's gonna wallop him in the second and third round. So I got McConaughey via K round 2, round 3, combo rounds there as an alt bet. Buchicha via sub is only there because frankly it's a sub versus knockout artist kind of fight, right? He's fighting Span. Span is finally fighting someone who doesn't hit like a truck, so maybe he's got a chance there. But I still think that Buchicha or Buchecha, whatever, however you say his name, one of the best grapplers in the combat sports era of these years. He has accolades on top of accolades. He's basically the Mackenzie Dern of the heavyweight division. You know, he's so good on the ground. So I think a round 1 sub is very much live there. Martinelli via K round 2, round 3. I spoke about that before. I think if Martinelli can survive the first round against the very old and aged Davy Grant or Grant Davy or whatever his name is, I do think that the second and third round is when Martinelli can wake up a little bit and knock out the guy pretty much. So that's my final alt bet there, and that's it for me.
That brings us to the end of the episode, and we'll be back next week breaking down. I think it's not a fight night, isn't it? It's not a numbered event next week.
Yeah, it's JDM versus Pratters in Perth.
Oh, great. Regional card. Looking forward to that.
Do you know what? I actually looked through it a little bit, and Australia has that region has low key been growing some talent. There's actually a lot of guys to be excited about, which 5 years ago they really wouldn't have been. Well, 3 years ago they wouldn't have been. So no, I'm actually excited for that one, surprisingly.
Yeah.
Look forward to breaking it down with you guys in a week.